The Father Louis Trivison Award is given to a Roman Catholic who exhibits outstanding leadership in advancing FutureChurch's Vatican II mission or vision in one of the more areas of teaching, administration, research, publication, advocacy, and pastoral care. This year, we present the Father Louis Trivison Award to Sister Helen Prejean. Sister Helen Prejean is known around the world for her tireless work against the death penalty. She's been instrumental in sparking national dialogue on capital punishment in the United States and in shaping the Catholic Church's vigorous opposition to all executions. Born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Prejean is the daughter of an attorney and the product of Catholic education. She entered the Sisters of St. Joseph of Medellín in 1957 and earned bachelor's degrees in education and English and a master's degree in religious education, and served as religious education director at St. Francis Cabrini Parish in New Orleans, and as the formation director for her community. In the early 80s, as her congregation was renewing its mission of social justice and solidarity with the poor, Sister Helen began to discern a calling to be more closely connected to the lives of the poor and suffering. And so in 1982, she moved into the St. Thomas Housing Project in New Orleans. There, along with 4 other sisters, she began to teach GED classes. Of that time, Sister Helen recalls, it didn't take long to see that for poor people, and especially poor Black people, there was a greased track to prison and death row. When a friend asked Sister Helen if she would be a pen pal to a person on death row, she agreed and began corresponding with Patrick Saunier, who had been sentenced to death for the murder of 2 teenagers. In time, Sister Helen became Saunier's spiritual director, and their first in-person visit was arranged. She recalls looking into his eyes. I remember thinking very clearly, whatever he has done, as bad as it may be, he's worth more than the worst act of his life. Sister Helen was present in the middle of the night on April 5th, 1985, when he was executed by electrocution. Of the experience, she says, witnessing his death was a second baptism for me. I couldn't watch someone be killed and walk away. Like a sacrament, the execution left an indelible mark on my soul. In the following months, she became spiritual advisor to another death row inmate, Robert Lee Willie, who was to meet the same fate as Saunier. After witnessing these executions, Sister Helen realized that the lethal ritual would continue unchallenged unless its secrecy was stripped away, and so she wrote her first book, Dead Man Walking, an eyewitness account of the death penalty in the United States. The prophetic work landed on bookshelves at a time when national support for the penalty was over 80%, and even higher in her native Louisiana. It remained on the New York Times bestseller list for 31 weeks and ignited a national debate on capital punishment. It has since inspired an Academy Award-winning movie, a play, and an opera. Sister Helen embarked on a rigorous speaking tour that she continues to this day. Her presentations and advocacy against the death penalty educate people about what she calls the 3 deepest wounds of society: racism, poverty, and a penchant to solve problems with violence. She also calls on the church and Christians to stand on both sides of the cross, the ones being executed and the victims' families. In addition, her ministry against the death penalty, which she founded, Survive, an organization that provides support and counseling for grieving families. Her ministry and activism has taken her around the world and brought her into personal conversation with US presidents and Supreme Court justices, prime ministers, and even popes. Over the decades, Sister Helen has made personal approaches to 2 popes, John Paul II and Pope Francis, urging them to establish the Catholic Church's position as unequivocally opposed to capital punishment under any and all circumstances. In 1995, she wrote to Pope John Paul II, challenging his words in Evangelii Vitae, the Gospel of Life, which upheld the state's right to execute in cases of absolute necessity. She wrote, How can any government vulnerable to undue influence of the rich and powerful and subject to every kind of prejudice have the purity and integrity to select certain of its citizens for punishment by death? She continued to tell the Pope that she prayed with Catholic opposition to government executions will be unequivocal. Shortly after Sister Helen's urging, the Catechism was revised to strengthen the Church's opposition to executions, although it allowed for very few exceptions. Then, not long after meeting with Sister Helen in August of 2018, Pope Francis announced new language to the Catechism, declaring that the death penalty was inadmissible with no exceptions because of its attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person. And in his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, he ratified the change, writing, "Today we state clearly that the death penalty is inadmissible, and the Church is firmly committed to calling for its abolition worldwide." Now, Sister Helen continues her work, dividing her time between educating the public and campaigning against the death penalty, counseling individual death row prisoners, and working with murder victims' family members. Sister Helen's second book, The Death of Innocence, an eyewitness account of wrongful executions, was published in 2004. And then her third book, River of Fire, My Spiritual Journey, in 2019. Sister Helen, it's with great honor and joy that Future Church presents you with the 2021 Father Louis Trivison Award for your prophetic and persistent ministry to death row inmates, victims' families, and against the death penalty, which has helped to bring real change to church teaching. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Well done. But, this award for Future Church, I want to hold up every leader of adult formation in a parish, every teacher in a classroom with young people, every person that goes and visits the sick in parishes, every person that does prison ministry, every person who befriends and shoulders the struggle of gay people who, in the official teaching of the church, are so not honored and spoken of in very, very disrespectful terms still. And I want to talk about people like Christine, who's been in there, everybody who has taught the scriptures, where you get into the prophetic call within the scriptures, not to uphold the status quo, not to speak truth to power, to change things because people are suffering, and to uphold what Pope Francis has said, that we who are believers in Jesus must be the ones who are the field hospitals out close to where people suffer in our society. I want to hold up every one of those people, because that is where the harvest grows. That is where the kingdom of God is sprouting out. And people like Chloe, who do art. Art breaks open our usual way of thinking about things. Artists are people that help us pull back the curtain where everybody says, this is a fine idea, what we're doing, and helps to look at the different dimension, which is the Christ dimension, which is the human dimension, that then says, look at this. I mean, I have a lot to learn. Chloe, you made me want to go, and I want to look into all this thing of how white supremacy has really been upheld in iconic art in the churches, because it's in our mentality, it's in our DNA. And we just think white people are superior. I mean, and then you just look at all of the iconic works, all of the art in all of the churches, all those white faces, even Jesus with a white face. Mary with a white face. Artists break open things because they have a fire in them, and we have to name it from its source, which is the Holy Spirit. It just says, this is the way things have been seen. Let me show you. Let me just bring you there. Let me show you. And by God's grace, that's what I played a little part in that, because I got catapulted into the death house in Louisiana. I was a religious ed coordinator in my parish. I had taught young people, always loved teaching. I was always out in the suburbs. It was almost always with white people of privilege. But I had a good heart, as most people do. It's not that people are bad or evil when they think they got to support the death penalty. They've been made to be afraid. They're told these people are so evil, you can't even put them in a prison. They'll kill other guards or inmates, and they're made to be afraid, and they go along. And the death penalty is kept secret. It's a secret ritual. It's done behind prison walls. I just talked to students at a high school in Texas. I said, your state has killed over 500 people, and it's been very removed from you. There's a saying in Latin America, what our eyes don't see, our hearts can't feel. Our whole job is to get in there, and what we witness to, then we go out and we tell. And that's the way the gospel of Jesus has always worked. These slaves that went all the way back, people witnessing, people being slaves, the plantation owners that recognize, always think of these stories of conversion of people, ordinary people. Like picture a woman in fine dress coming out of St. Louis Basilica in New Orleans, right there in the plaza in our central place there by the river, right near St. Louis Basilica. It was one of the biggest auction blocks for slaves in the United States, because there's a port in New Orleans, slaves were deposited. So I'll picture a woman coming out of Mass on a Sunday morning or whenever it was. And there in the auction block, she sees there's a woman, and she is being separated from her children. The owners are auctioning. I'll take that kid. I'll take those two. I'll take that three. And her children are being taken from her. And it's all legal. And because there was no religious outcry against it, there were no bishops, there were no people saying, no, slavery's wrong. How can we be doing this? I mean, the way religion, our Catholic faith was working in the whole plantation system and slavery I'm thinking of my own state, Louisiana, and the plantation owners would go to Mass on Sunday, and they would hear the quote from St. Paul, slaves, be obedient to your masters, using the scriptures, sanctifying it, legitimizing it. Now be kind to, but not questioning. How can you be the owner of human beings as property? And we urge you to be kind, but we know from the terrible, terrible stories of beatings and deaths and rapes, plantation owners given that power, the white plantation owners were anything but kind. And just the stories that emerge of slaves that have emerged and talked to us about what happened to them. Well, kind of the same thing happened to me, a white woman of privilege, educated by the Sisters of St. Joseph. By the time I was a junior in high school at St. Joseph Academy, I knew how to do public speaking. I knew how to write. I was an agent of change. That's what education does for you. Teaches you your gifts. And then we can get out in the world, we can make a difference. And here I get catapulted into always my image. It's very homely. almost like falling down a laundry chute. And all of a sudden, there I am with people on death row and in the killing chamber in Louisiana. And in in the river of fire, talk about gradually waking up. Gradually. I was 40 years old before I realized the gospel of Jesus was not just about being charitable to people and praying for poor people that one day they'll get a great reward for all their sufferings, suffering with Christ on the cross while they're on earth. But one day you're going to get a great reward. And breaking out of that. How do we break out of anything? It's because of grace, and it's because of community. And that's what Future Church is about. It's this stalwart little community of faith, being in there, seeing what we see, speaking truth as we see it, being there to support each other. You can't make it without community. Nobody can make it without community. I wouldn't be here without the community of my sisterhood with the Sisters of St. Joseph. And then the community of the human rights community, the lawyers I've met, the people in Amnesty International who have taught me. I witnessed human beings being killed in the most deliberate fashion, and it was all legal. And everybody participated and everybody thought it was fine. But I had come to know the human being who was being killed in that electric chair or lethally injected. And by God's good grace, I became a witness. And that is what I must do with my life. I do not have a choice. It is God's grace in me. And the missioning, the going out, is just so integral to the gospel of Jesus. What we have seen and heard, that is what we proclaim to you. And that's what it's about to be church, what it's about to be followers of Jesus. And we bolster each other. Events like this are where we come together and we blow on the coals of our faith so that the fire can come forth from those smoldering embers that are in us all. So I cannot really accept the award for myself. See me as a prism, shine the light through me, and look at all the people in the church that are doing all these things to live the gospel of Jesus and make it real. People like Chloe doing the art, and those other people I mentioned, right in there with the people where it counts the most. And so it's just a joy to be with all of you. And thank you for letting me be here. And may God bless us all. And hey, you can't lose your sense of humor. Not only can you not lose it, you got to cultivate it like a garden, because it's like transcendence. Because God's in charge, we're doing our best, we turn it over, but don't lose your humor. Keep it activated. We need it.
Okay. All right. I'm crying, so that's okay. But I'm going to
Great sense of humor. Really great sense of humor, Deborah. That's great. That's a humor she cries. That's great.
Okay, so we're going to open this up, and let's see, who was it, Russ? The group that somebody had a question from the last.
Here's Holyoke.
It was Mount Holyoke Catholic Community.
Yeah, so if you want to go first, and then I know we have other people that are going to want to ask questions or comment or whatever, but.
Speak.
Okay, where did that go to?
We can see.
Holyoke.
And this is a sister of St. Joseph here. So Sister Annette McDermott from Springfield. So I want to say thank you. We're just bringing in the student. She came back out. She had to leave for a second, but she's here now with her question.
Great, good.
Oh my gosh, this is a celebrity moment for me. I'm a huge fan. Thank you so much for being with us here. Thanks for the opportunity to interact with you today. I just wanted to ask you, like, for young people, we're born like in a generation with like climate change, and there's just a lot of despair, especially with the pandemic. And you're someone who has worked around that. We were talking about like laughter and hope and all of those things. So like if you could give a single like piece of advice for us to like keep our energies going and to keep fighting the good fight, like what would you say?
Yeah, right. No, that's so important. The things you're involved in is where the hope flows through you. We don't have the luxury of despair. But if you're only looking at stuff, if you're only getting that iPhone in your hand and just getting all the news in about all the bad stuff in the world, and you're not engaged, you don't have your hand on the rope somewhere and a pulling, whatever it is, then you can't experience hope, because hope is an active verb. You got to be involved in something. And when you're involved in something, climate change, oh my God, climate change. Here we are, Future Church, the people. And I mean, we just found out so far, our bishops haven't spoken out about climate change. But then Vatican II taught us the bishops are not the church. The people are the church. We're the people. We see it. We speak out and we get engaged. And so engagement, and you feel the hope flowing through you when you get involved. When the minute you pick up the rope on any issue and begin to act, you will feel the life coming through you. As long as you're on the side, watching the river of history go by, looking at all the terrible things, you're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to be paralyzed. So the whole secret is to act, to pray. Prayer is what blows on the coals of our souls and wakes us up to, you got to do something. Go do something. And then you act and hope flows through us. That's my thing. That's what I think. Maybe somebody else wants to speak to this too, like Christine or anybody.
No, you said it, Helen. Mwah. Beautiful.
She kissing me?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
She is
virtual thing. This virtual.
She is kissing you. That is for sure. That's what's going on. I witnessed it. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody who else would like to join in the conversation here? Don't be shy.
Thank you, Holyoke.
Yeah.
You're just such an inspiration for all of us.
Beautiful.
Come on, y'all. What we got? What we got?
So just as a reminder, in your reactions tab or reactions button, that's where you'll find the ability to raise your hand. If you do want to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you as you do that. In the meantime, Sister Helen, oh here, let me do this so you're not listening to a disembodied voice. In the meantime, I wondered if you had, so you've had some influence with Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis. Wondered if you had a moment in a room with the USCCB before they begin deliberations on whatever it is this document is going to be on the Eucharist. What advice would you give to them?
No, I never give advice. You know that. It's not a good thing to give advice to other people.
What comments would you make?
Oh, yeah. And it would not be comments. What it would be is I would say to them, let me tell you a story. And I'd bring them right there. I'd bring them right there. Because the suffering, the torture of what is going on with the death penalty in this country is unspeakable. The man I have on death row now that I'm accompanying, Manuel Ortiz, has been on Louisiana's death row for 29 years. Every now and then there's a breakthrough and we hear of an innocent person that gets freed. Alone in that cell, as big as a small bathroom, that man sits. And the suffering is secret. It's hidden from our eyes. It was just the gospel the other day. What is secret and hidden, we will bring to light. And that is what our witness does. And I would tell them a story. I would tell them the same story that I told to Pope John Paul II when I got to have a direct dialogue with him about walking with a man to be executed in Louisiana, shackled hand and foot, and turning to me as we were about to walk and saying, "Sister, please pray God holds up our lives and bring them there. Bring them there." Because what the eyes don't see, the heart can't feel. It is the witnessing. It is the way the faith has always been told, is witnesses share where Christ was in that death chamber, where when that man was killed, and I'm saying to him, grace in me, saying to him, look at my face when they kill you, I will be the face of Christ for you. Where was Christ in that killing chamber that day? And no religious leader protested the killing that night in the dark, 1984. But when we're there and we witness it, we speak the truth about what we witness. And that's what I do with the bishops. It's really hard. The higher up you move in the church, if we can talk about higher or lower, the more administrative positions you get, the more gloves you have on your hands that you don't get to touch the suffering people. I mean, you're thinking about building the cathedral, and who are your donors? You don't want to get them PO'd, you know, you need them, you know. And so climate change, why would they be silent about climate change, which is our biggest threat to our planet that we have ever witnessed? Why be silent on that? And when we enter into compassion with each other, we ask ourselves, each of those bishops, what pressure are they under? Who would they make angry if they made a big public statement and urged people about climate change? Who would they make angry? Whose support might they lose? And whenever we approach each other, we are all under pressure. We are all social beings, but we have to address it with each other. But we have to have, I believe, that compassion. You must be under a lot of pressure. Tell me, Bishop, what is it? What is it? How can we bolster you? How can the people stand behind you to help you speak out on the possibly most urgent issue of our day? Because we're losing our planet and we're losing our people.
Thank you.
Tom Piazza, you've got a question.
Unmute. Well, you could talk about the bishops. You know, frankly, I consider the current crop of American bishops to be hopeless. Well, what would you say to the Supreme Court? Now, it turns out most of them are Catholic. It's a conservative majority. They're Catholic. What would you say to the Supreme Court?
I am saying to the Supreme Court, there are different ways to address the Supreme Court. I got to tell you all this. I'm writing a book right now for Orbis. Good old Orbis. They've been in there, right?
Yeah.
It's about my journals. And so it's and telling about, I mean, going back over the years, I've been keeping journals since 1963, long before a lot of you with twinkles in God's eye. But it was the whole thing of taking on Justice Scalia, this Catholic on the Supreme Court. And I take him on in this book, Tom, it's called Death of Innocence, where Scalia got in there with people at a conference in Chicago, and he's quoting Romans 13. To show, quoting the epistle of St. Paul, to say that God supports whatever civil authority does and that God supports the death penalty. He invoked Romans 13 to speak to people at this conference. So I take him on in this book. And the reason it was in my journal is I was remembering my 3 encounters with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Fantastic Supreme Court justice, right? And she called me into her chambers. I met with her when Dead Man Walking came out. Then she called me in her chambers, and I went when The Death of Innocence came out. And her good friend was Scalia, Antonin Scalia. They go to the opera together.
Yeah.
And she basically said to me, sister, look, stick to educating the public like you did in that. But Scalia was upset about your book. I went, no kidding. He was upset. His decision helped kill Dobie Williams. The 5-4 decision from the Supreme Court that killed Dobie Williams, the first person in The Death of Innocence, an African-American man with an IQ of 65 that Louisiana killed. And his decision is there to help kill that man. You better believe I'm going to take him on. And I left, visited with Ginsburg, whom I love. The third time was with the opera of Dead Man Walking at the Kennedy Center, which I heard later, she was the one who pressed for it to come there. There's no way I'm not going to take him on. Or we, the citizens, take on the Constitution. They don't own the Constitution. They are actually looking at the words in the 8th Amendment that says you don't practice cruel punishment, and they don't see. And when you have conscious, imaginative human beings and you put them in a cell as small as a small bathroom for 20 years and take them out and killing them, that's not cruelty. We can see that's cruelty and the evolving standard of decency of a people that gradually marks the progress of a maturing society. We are all engaged in our democracy with that and with our church. So we do take them on, Tom. We do take them on. It's the people growing in awareness of consciousness, as we are with gay people in this country, transgender people in this country, immigrants in this country, and people imprisoned and thrown away forever in these in imprisonment. We, the people, wake up. That's Christ alive in us, and that's what creates change, Tom. So we got to take them on. You got any words you want to give to the issue? Tom, what would you say to them?
Hard to say, a lot of them have, the way we grew up, in the Catholic Church, it was almost like a cult, huh? Authority was a big thing.
Right.
And there's a whole mentality that's carried over.
Right.
We're still dealing with that.
Sure.
A lot of younger people have escaped from that. They didn't go through it the way we did when we grew up.
Right.
When we grew up, Catholic Church was like a cult.
Got that.
And so, at any rate.
But as we have experiences, Tom, and we speak truth, we have authority. Or we have cred in street language. You got
and it takes time. You're right. They're evolving standards. Sometimes we take a couple of steps forward. Occasionally we take a step back.
We're moving though.
We've been through that. So that's true in the church. It's true in our country.
No, that's right.
But there's hope. Eventually
we are shutting down the death penalty in the United States.
Yeah, it's happening. It's
happening. We are. We, the people, are doing that. It's always
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
And Deborah agrees. Must be right.
Thanks, Tom. Leslie Colvin, please ask your question.
Thanks, Deb. Sister Helen, thank you for being such a amazing witness for the gospel. I am sad to report that I am in Alabama, and any moment now, there will be a release of a statement because the state is tonight to execute Willie B. Smith III for 1991 murder. And his IQ is 64. So I just wanted to share that for all of us to be mindful and pray not only for his victims, but also for Mr. Smith and his family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. So Helen, one of the thornier issues, I think, is, what about the families of victims? What about victims and their loved ones? And can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of your work
Sure.
in that way too?
Sure. When I wrote Dead Man Walking, I had a wonderful editor. Believe me, or you never would have heard of this book, Dead Man Walking. He helped me really shape the story and to be truthful when I made mistakes. So the shaping of the story in the first draft he got, it was that I spent so much time, or just the energy of the book was all on the human rights of the person about to be executed. And he said to me, you wait far too long before you talk about the crime. And Patrick Sonnier with his brother had killed 2 innocent teenage kids, shot them point blank in the back of the head, and their bodies are found in a harvested sugarcane field in Louisiana. And then their families, for the rest of their lives, will be in the valley of darkness trying to make their way out from this incredible grief. And he said, you wait for too long. You sow in the human rights that they should be executed. Nobody's going to read your book. They're going to think, well, she's a Catholic nun, believes in forgiveness, believes in Jesus. They're going to expect every platitude out of your mouth. And if you, in the first 10 pages of this book, don't bring them into that sugarcane field with the bodies of those slain teenagers there, shot in the back of the head and gone forever from life, nobody's going to read your book. And then your job is to take them from that scene and feel the outrage of the death of those kids and take them step by step by step into that execution chamber, where they now are going to witness that the state, in order to deal with this problem of violence, is going to kill Patrick Sonnier in the electric chair. That's your job as a writer. And then, because when I first got involved with the death penalty, the victims' families whose children had, one of the fathers especially, he was, like giving his own press conferences. He's so mad, he's so angry, he's saying he wants to pull the switch himself. And I'm going, man, I'm the last one they want to see. I'm the spiritual advisor to both these men that killed their children. And I stayed away. I thought, I'm trying to picture what the encounter would be. I'm being the last person. And good Jason Epstein, my editor, looking at that draft, the first draft of Dead Man Walking with Me, looked me right in the eye and he said, well, you're kind of letting yourself off kind of easy there, that you didn't reach out to the victim's family. Did you write them a note or anything that you're sorry about their children being killed? I said, no. And he looked at me and he just said, well, it was cowardice, wasn't it? You were scared, weren't you? I said, yeah. I was trying to picture myself with those people, And he said, look, you be sure in your book to take people with you, not just on the peaks of the waves where you handle everything great, but where you made a mistake. Take them in the trough with you. And then you'll be trustworthy to them because you're human and you made mistakes. And so that's been a journey, Deborah. So going and then the second story in Dead Man Walking, you will see how I reached out to the victims' families whose daughter had been killed and began to make my way with victims' families and understanding their struggle. Here we are, how many years later, since 76, and to see the hypocrisy and the downright hypocrisy of state saying to victims' families, here's what we're going to do for you. Here's what we're going to, what you do, sorry you have to wait so long. The average wait for executions is like 18 years, something like that. But when it's time for the execution, we're going to let you sit on the front row, send your representative, and you're going to get to watch as we kill the one who killed your loved one, and you get to witness his death. And that's going to give you, they say, closure, healing. That is what we're going to do for you. And it is so selective. There are no Black families ever sitting in that witness room, because overwhelmingly, in the application of the death penalty, overwhelmingly, it is when white people are killed that the death penalty is sought in the first place. But the promise to tell people to wait that long with their grief public and the media at their door every time there's a change in the status of the case, and to say what we're going to give you is now you get to watch as we do the violence to the one who killed your loved one. You witness that violence and it will heal you. That is called redemptive violence. It is totally against the gospel of Jesus. And more victims' families have been rising up saying, don't do that for us. Where it really became present was in New Jersey, where when the New Jersey legislature was looking to repeal the death penalty, 62 murder victims' families testified saying, don't kill for us. And they explained how the death penalty re-victimizes them because they gotta wait, and they wait, and it's all in public, and they can't go to a private place even to grieve, because when you have a death penalty, it's a public act, it's legal, and they couldn't escape the media. And they just wanted to be able, some of them, I remember giving a talk in Cincinnati in a church, a woman came up during the Q&A to the microphone there in the middle of the aisle and just saying, my sister was killed and we are just trying to grieve. But they're seeking the death penalty. And how can we go to a place to grieve? And it's a farce. And so more and more victims' families are standing up to just say, don't kill for us. You've re-victimized us with the death penalty. And their witness is what is healing us. It's their witness.
Terry McCollum.
Hello. Thank you for your wonderful, inspiring presentation. I think your sense of humor, which in other words, you're not taking yourself so serious.
Exactly.
It allows you more flexibility, I think, in dealing with people, right?
Right.
Because it's not so rigid, but that's not what I wanted to bring up.
But well put.
Now,
for not wanting to bring it out.
Hey, you mentioned, I want to thank you for mentioning a couple of times about LGBTQ people. And so, and as you know, my question will be about the bishops. The bishops have opposed most progressive legislation in the United States around housing rights, suicide prevention, et cetera, because it included provision for LGBTQ people. And their own conference, their secretary was outed by the conservative media and had to resign. And how could that man have ever lived being the secretary to a homophobic bishop's thing? That's another subject. So the question was asked about how would you recommend dealing with the Supreme Court justices? So my question's, how do we deal with these these bishops who take the position of power and clericalism as if they are the Supreme Court, whatever. So how do you recommend, practically speaking, dealing with the bishops? That's all.
Yeah, no, that's so big. And it's really important, Terry. Look, how did Jesus deal with the religious authorities of the temple cult of his day? How did he deal with them? He didn't deal with them directly. You don't take them on. what you do for the most part, he did in some circumstances where directly he called them out on what they were doing. It's the prophetic voice. It's to speak the truth to power. But mainly it was to go and be with the people, the feast in which everybody's invited, everybody sits at the table. That is what he spent his energy on, was being with the people. And that's what we have to do. We could use all our energy trying to take on the US bishops. Just think of it. Think what your life would be. You're going to take them on. You sure got a lot of stuff. You can take them on. But it's how do we get to the people, the transformation of hearts that the gospel of Jesus calls us to. I mean, for years, the bishops of the United States did not address the death penalty. Nobody did. We had an archbishop in New Orleans, Philip M. Hannon, who was archbishop, and no Louisiana bishops would speak out about the death penalty. So am I taking them on? No, it's getting to the people to change the hearts and minds of the people. As the people change, then the leadership may or may not change, but Vatican II laid it out for us. We are the church. We, the people, when we live the faith, we make Christ present in the world. We are Eucharist. We are body of Christ. We are communion together. We are that. And when I've been with people on death row or sat at a meal to share the last meal with somebody about to be executed, I knew it was the Eucharist. You know it's Eucharist because this is the human being. And this human being has a dignity that no one can take from him or from her. And we get in there and we do it because we can get into such a polarized kind of thing of trying to start taking on members of Congress, start taking on the bishops. You can wear your bloody self out, Terry.
Yeah.
But we work for change in the field where we are, and we help awaken our own hearts, and we get out there and we do something concrete in the community where we are, where it counts. And I bet you already been doing that.
Of course, but unfortunately for many of us, we can't do it within the institutional church. But you're saying be Christian, forgive the bishops if necessary, but don't let them stop you from living and being
Don't forgive them too quick. No, Terry, don't forgive them too quick because they're wrong.
Yeah,
and
they
they're
are.
outside of the gospel. But it's
don't
the people.
Don't let them limit you.
Exactly.
Or
And you know, and what Pope Francis says is to be the field hospital out there where the people are hurting. That's what we got to do. And when you do that, and when you're with people, you know, that's what we got to do. You know it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you apply that to women in the church, Sister Helen?
Hoo-hoo. Hey, Christine, you want to get in here on this? Where is Christine? Where is she?
I'm right here.
All right. What do you want to say about women in church? Come on, Christine.
Women rock. Women are the church, and women will be the salvation of the church.
Really?
And when you want to talk about who's out there with the people, it's the women. It's the women, you know, in my parish. It's the lay ecclesial ministers who are mostly women, who are given the services at the soup kitchen, who's making the peanut butter sandwiches at the back door. So I think that's all there. I also think, though, that I might have a little bit different. I think it's good to nag the bishops on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And
how does the daily basis of nagging go on?
Well, right, you might be sorry you asked, but I was pretty surprised to see the number of dioceses that are doing a synod process, the Synod on Synodality, which is Francis's effort to bring the vision of Vatican II into the structural components of the church to provide a place for everyone to have voice. Now, admittedly, I'm I have some rose-colored glasses about it, probably, but I also believe we've got to take every opportunity we can
Oh, yeah.
to have voice. And
Yeah.
so I think that, certainly that's happening in way more dioceses than I thought. I did an informal poll over the weekend of about over 60 websites, and well over half already had stuff on their website for how people can participate. And the other thing the other day from the Synod on the Amazon, Francis has now made permitted a juridical body in the Amazon that's composed of bishops, women, men, lay people, to implement what the vision of the Amazon Synod, which did include married men and women, and women deacons, married priests and women deacons. But before I get off that soap opera, Helen, I just have to tell you how much Louis Trivison would have just loved this tonight. And I have to tell you too, that you channel him in many ways.
Really?
He was a powerful preacher. He was all about the gospel and what Jesus was doing and what are you doing in your life.
Yeah.
He had the ability, well, people loved him to death.
Yeah.
And so I really can't help but bring him into my awareness.
Oh, that's so special. I wrote this book, River of Fire, The Awakening to the Gospel of Justice. Y'all, I was 40 blooming years old before I realized the gospel of Jesus wasn't just about being charitable to people and praying, but engaging in justice. And that's grace that wakes us up,
Yeah,
but
I
in
think
the appendix, I have this letter to Pope Francis because I met him. I met him about a death row inmate, delivered a letter to him in Rome of Richard Glossop, whose life he helped save in Oklahoma. But
Wow.
I just said, Pope, well, I didn't say, I said, Your Holiness, this letter, I mean, you're going to do it right. I just said, how are we ever going to have a healthy church if we don't have women in there? As long as we have an all-male, making the decisions, it's not going to be healthy. We need the wisdom of women at the table making policy, the whole bit, and just laid it out there. And it's true. And I said, what about preaching? I preach before the United Nations. I can't do a homily in my own church. They call it some kind of little reflection after the youth. I mean, women can't even read the blooming gospel. I mean, honestly, Pope, honestly. And he gets it. But he's one person, and he knows about tilling the soil, and that change has to come from the bottom up. This synod is his way of getting the voices of the people in the church. Bring it on.
That's right. And that's what we've been doing for a very long time. We've been doing, we do the engagement from the grassroots, and we know that, and then we engage our leaders as well, because we know it makes it possible for things to change when people get together and say, we've got it. And it's going to happen. This is already a done deal. It's already happening. It's a done deal. We're just like watching it unfold. That's how I see it. I'm so positive about it. Yeah, I'm just so
that's great, Deborah. And that's what Jesus said. Look, can you see the harvest? Can you see it coming? I mean, in Vatican II, what did it tell us to do? Look for the signs of the times. Can you see? Because people are so overwhelmed, the more news we get about the world, the more paralyzed we feel, right?
Yeah, right.
But to see the hope and help be part of that hope, that's Christ living in us. That is the Spirit given into our hearts.
Amen.
And we work for that harvest to come.
Amen. Russ, what do you think?
Chloe, you got any words?
It's such an honor to be near. I mean, I have been following you for so long, Sister Helen Prejean. So
no, don't overdo it.
It is truly such an honor to be here and hear you speak. And yes, I'm literally speechless. It is very, very cool to be here, even though it's virtually, but to like be in the same space as you.
You're an artist.
Such an honor.
Crack it open, Chloe. Look at that. What you are doing is fantastic. And it's not going to be an easy road. I mean, you get this little award, everybody pats you, yeah, great. And then you're out there. It's hard to be an artist in this culture. It is hard. You get in there because your days are going to be lonely and often they're going to be dark. But you get in there, you know the truth, and you get in there.
Well, I just wanted to take a moment as this night comes to, unfortunately, a close, because it's just been a joy to be with everyone. Just to thank you both for your presence here tonight and for being with us and for sharing your wonderful ministries with us and your words of wisdom. Chloe, everyone I talk to, everyone who sees your art tells me they can see that you're wise and intuitive and sensitive way beyond your years. And so we feel so blessed to have had you as a part of this project. And Sister Helen, you've been a hero and an inspiration to so many. And I know for me, personally, you've been a hero. So it's been a wonderful night, and we couldn't